Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The Manhattan Grill, located in the heart of an upscale city avenue, was a restaurant known for its understated luxury, crystal chandeliers, immaculate tablecloths, impeccable service. Customers came here to be seen as much as to eat. That evening, the lobby echoed with hushed conversations and the clatter of cutlery on crockery. Angela Robinson pushed open the door, holding her son Marcus's hand and guiding her granddaughter Sophie through, both marveling at the grandeur of the place. Her brown eyes, usually full of kindness, betrayed a suppressed concern. She had saved for weeks for this dinner, to give her children a moment of pleasure in a world that hadn't always been kind to them. They had barely sat down when a waiter approached with a closed face and condescending tone. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but you can't stay here. This is not the place for you." Angela froze, searching for an explanation. "Excuse me? We have a reservation, and we just want to have dinner." The waiter shrugged, unconcerned by the curious stares of the other customers. "I told you had to leave. Now." Humiliated, Angela felt her cheeks flush. Marcus squeezed her hand worriedly, while Sophie, her eyes full of tears, looked around in confusion. Some customers looked away in embarrassment, while others whispered among themselves, some shocked by the injustice, others indifferent. She gathered her courage and said softly, "Very well, we're leaving. But you must know that humiliating others never elevates you." She walked out with her children, her heart heavy, but with a silent determination. With every step on the cold sidewalk, she felt a pent-up anger, a flame just waiting to turn into strength. That night, Angela Robinson wasn't just a humiliated mother. She was a woman whose dignity had been trampled, but whose spirit refused to be broken. In the shadow of this injustice, a plan was brewing. One day, she would return, no longer as a customer, but as the one holding the reins of the Manhattan Grill. And on that day, the world would know that resilience and patience can reverse even the cruelest humiliations. Angela walked through the cold city streets, her children clinging to her. Marcus, his eyes reddened with tears, timidly asked questions. "Mom, why did they chase us away?" Angela squeezed his hand and answered calmly, even though her heart was pounding. "Because some people don't understand respect and dignity, my dear. But it's not our fault." Sophie, smaller, wiped her tears against her sleeve and whispered, "I just wanted to eat, like everyone else." Angela paused for a moment and looked at her children, realizing how much this humiliation had affected them. She took a deep breath and said, "Listen to me. Tonight we were rejected, but it's just a moment in our lives. We're going to use this pain to build something bigger, something no one can ever take away from us." They walked on, passing lit storefronts where well-dressed customers dined comfortably, unaware of the scene they had just caused. Every contemptuous glance Angela received fueled a silent but burning determination within her. Arriving at her modest but warm apartment, Angela closed the door behind her and knelt down to look her children in the eyes. "Marcus, Sophie, you'll see that Mom isn't just a mother. I'm a woman who knows how to fight. And this restaurant, it's not over. One day, I'll come back. Not as a customer. As someone who holds the keys." Marcus smiled weakly, admiring his mother's courage. Sophie, still shy, nodded. In that small apartment, a plan was beginning to take shape, a plan that would turn humiliation into victory. Angela spent the night thinking, writing notes, and strategizing. She knew she had to be patient and intelligent. Revenge wasn't just about immediate confrontation, it was a long-term process, a path toward justice and respect. And in the stillness of the night, she promised herself, no one would ever again be able to humiliate her family with impunity. The Manhattan Grill, and those inside, would soon discover that beneath the guise of a simple mother lay a woman capable of turning the tide of her own history. Angela Robinson was no ordinary woman. Behind her humble appearance and modest circumstances lay a history of success and independence. Before the trials that shattered her, she had run a small, successful chain of restaurants in several cities. Her culinary talent, business acumen, and natural charisma quickly made her a respected figure in the culinary world. But this success attracted jealousy and injustice. Unscrupulous partners, motivated by profit and discrimination, had maneuvered to force her out of her own businesses. Months passed, and Angela lost everything she had built, her culinary empire, her prestige, and with them, part of her dream for her children. Yet Angela wasn't one to be crushed by circumstances. After that fall, she disappeared from the radar, working in the shadows, investing in real estate and small businesses, quietly accumulating resources and contacts. She knew that patience and strategy were her most powerful allies. That evening, after the humiliation at the Manhattan Grill, Angela sat at her desk, surrounded by papers, plans, and financial documents. Her children slept in the next room, oblivious to the complex world their mother had been navigating for years. She took out a time-worn black notebook, in which she jotted down everything: purchasing strategies, financial contacts, competitors' weak points. Each note was a piece of a puzzle that, once put together, would allow her to regain control and turn humiliation into triumph. She thought of Blake, the arrogant owner of the Manhattan Grill, his contemptuous employees, and the indifferent customers. His mind didn't harbor hatred, but a relentless determination. This humiliation wouldn't be forgotten, but it would be transformed into energy to build something greater, something no one could ever take away from him. Angela took a moment to look at her children, imagining the future she would give them, a future where they would know dignity, strength, and justice. She knew that her success would not only be financial, but symbolic. Taking over the Manhattan Grill would be more than revenge, it would be a statement. A lesson in courage and resilience for her children and for all those who had been unfairly demeaned. And so, in the silence of her modest apartment, Angela Robinson plotted the first steps of her return, knowing that every decision, every move, every touch would be crucial. The road would be long, but she was ready. The past had shaped her, and now it was time to transform pain into power. The weeks following the humiliation at the Manhattan Grill were a turning point for Angela Robinson. Every morning, she rose before dawn, determined to turn her anger into an action plan. She began by studying the restaurant, its customers, its staff, and especially its owner, Jonathan Blake, an arrogant white man who seemed to believe that the elite should never be bothered by those they considered inferior. Angela visited the neighborhood under various pretexts. She observed the comings and goings, noted the peak hours, the regular customers, the suppliers, and even the layout of the kitchens. She knew that a takeover would not be done on a whim, but on a careful understanding of the company and its weaknesses. She contacted a former financial associate, David Harper, a quiet but brilliant businessman who had worked with her on previous ventures. Together, they analyzed the Manhattan Grill's finances, identifying weak points and investment opportunities. Angela quickly realized that the restaurant, despite its prestige, was vulnerable: accumulated debts, an over-reliance on a few wealthy clients, and a staff overconfident in Blake's arrogance. Angela began discreetly meeting with investors and bankers, always under slightly different identities, to prepare a solid financial package for the acquisition. Every meeting, every negotiation, every phone call was a piece of the puzzle. During this time, she taught her children the importance of discipline and patience. Marcus and Sophie sometimes accompanied her when she visited other schools, learning to observe, understand, and ask intelligent questions. Angela wanted her children to understand that power came not from strength or immediate revenge, but from strategy, intelligence, and perseverance. Every night, Angela returned to her modest apartment, pondering her next steps. She knew buying the Manhattan Grill would be difficult, but she was ready. She wasn't just plotting personal revenge, she was building an empire that would guarantee respect and dignity, not just for herself and her children, but for all those who had been humiliated and ignored. And so, in the shadows, Angela Robinson transformed pain into power. Every observation, every note, every strategy brought her closer to her goal: to return to the Manhattan Grill, no longer as a customer, but as the owner of the place that had humiliated her. The road would be long, but she knew that every step brought her closer to victory. 6 months had passed since Angela Robinson's humiliation. Every day had been spent meticulously researching the Manhattan Grill, building a network of reliable investors, and developing a discreet but effective acquisition plan. That evening, she walked through the restaurant's doors again, but this time under a different identity, Angela Simmons, a renowned investor and restaurant consultant. She entered elegantly, dressed in a sober but impeccable suit, and was immediately greeted by a host who, unlike in the past, showed no sign of prejudice. His gaze was assured, his calm utter. Marcus and Sophie stood aside, watching their mother with admiration and a certain excitement. Angela had made sure to schedule a meeting with Jonathan Blake and his partners to discuss a possible injection of funds into the restaurant. She knew Blake would never turn down a financial opportunity presented by a skilled investor. The meeting took place in Blake's luxurious office, a space decorated with dark wood paneling and culinary trophies. Angela walked in confidently and shook Blake's hand, who looked at her with a mixture of surprise and curiosity. "Ms. Simmons, nice to meet you. What can I do for you?" he asked, a professional smile fixed on his lips. Angela calmly placed her file on the table. "I am here to discuss a potential partnership and investment opportunity in your establishment. I have studied your business and believe there are significant opportunities to maximize your profits and grow your brand." Blake nodded, visibly interested but unaware of Angela's true identity. The presentations and discussions continued for several hours. Angela presented detailed analyses, financial projections, and expansion strategies, impressing Blake and his partners with her professionalism and vision. At the end of the meeting, Blake was enthusiastic. "Your expertise is impressive, Ms. Simmons. We would be delighted to collaborate with you." Angela left the office with a small smile. At that moment, she knew the hardest part, establishing a foothold in the Manhattan Grill, was done. But the real challenge came next, accumulating enough shares to gain complete control of the establishment, while keeping her former identity a secret. As she drove home, Angela allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. She had taken the first step toward revenge. The following weeks and months would be crucial, but she felt closer than ever to transforming the humiliation of the past into a resounding triumph. After her first successful encounter with Jonathan Blake under the guise of Angela Simmons, Angela Robinson intensified her efforts to establish her influence over the Manhattan Grill. Every morning, she reviewed the accounts, contacted investors, and discreetly planned the gradual acquisition of the restaurant's shares. She knew that patience would be her greatest ally. Total control wasn't achieved overnight, but through strategy and meticulous attention to detail. She also invested in other establishments and properties, diversifying her sources of income to secure a solid financial base. Every move she made was calculated. She wanted to be financially and strategically unassailable when she took control. Her children, Marcus and Sophie, were beginning to recognize their mother's hidden talents. Angela sometimes took them with her to observe operations in other restaurants and shops, showing them how to analyze a business, understand markets, and evaluate opportunities. Marcus, impressed, took notes in a small notebook, while Sophie asked pointed questions about Angela's decisions. Each outing was a lesson in life and resilience. Angela also maintained her contacts with lawyers and financial advisors, ensuring everything was legal and impeccably structured. She understood the importance of building her empire with respect and intelligence, rather than simply taking revenge through impulsive actions. Meanwhile, the Manhattan Grill continued to operate normally under Blake, who was unsuspecting. He viewed Angela Simmons as an ambitious and capable investor, never imagining that she was the woman he had humiliated just months earlier. Every evening, Angela reviewed the day's actions, noting progress, obstacles, and new opportunities. Her plans took shape, gradually buying back shares, preparing a spectacular opening night, and completely transforming the restaurant into a place where respect and excellence would reign. One evening, looking at Marcus and Sophie asleep, Angela whispered, "You will see, my children, one day we will show the world that dignity and patience can overturn all injustices." And in the silence of her apartment, surrounded by files and calculations, Angela Robinson continued to build her empire, preparing the triumphant return that would make her pain and humiliation history. Another 6 months had passed since Angela had begun her acquisition strategy. The constant effort, patience, and financial intelligence had paid off. Angela Robinson, still under the alias Angela Simmons, now held the majority stake in the Manhattan Grill. The restaurant, which had been the scene of her humiliation, was now within her grasp. She spent several weeks finalizing the details of the opening night, an occasion that would be both a new beginning for the restaurant and a moment of public recognition of her authority. Every detail mattered: the decor, the menu, the guest selection, and above all, the element of surprise. Angela wanted the moment to be perfect, to symbolize both resilience and triumph. Her children, Marcus and Sophie, were now fully aware of their mother's strength and talent. Angela involved them in certain symbolic decisions, such as choosing the decorations and selecting the evening's signature dishes. Marcus, with his attentive eye, noted every detail seriously, while Sophie asked intelligent questions about the flow of the event. Angela looked at them with pride. They now understood that power came as much from intelligence and patience as from strength. The day of the party was approaching. Angela checked the invitations, financial arrangements, and logistics one last time. Every employee in the restaurant had been subtly and professionally informed of the new management, so that the staff would be prepared for the owner's arrival without causing chaos. That evening, as the first guests arrived, Angela stood in the shadows of the entrance, watching the customers and employees, feeling a strange combination of nervousness and excitement. She knew the moment of revelation would be the culmination of her strategy. Jonathan Blake, still unaware of Angela's true identity, greeted the guests with his usual arrogance, certain that the evening would be a celebration of his success. But he had no idea that the woman he thought was an ordinary investor was the one who would reverse his position and transform his restaurant into a symbol of respect and inclusion. Angela took a deep breath and whispered to Marcus and Sophie. "Everything is ready. Soon, everyone will know that dignity and perseverance always triumph in the end." And so, in the calm before the storm, the once humiliated woman prepared to take back what was hers, ready to transform the pain of the past into a resounding victory. The grand opening party was in full swing at the Manhattan Grill. The lights from the crystal chandeliers reflected an atmosphere of luxury and prestige. Guests, dressed in elegant attire, sipped cocktails and exchanged compliments on the service and decor. Jonathan Blake moved with confidence, convinced that everything depended on his charisma and reputation. Angela Robinson, known as Angela Simmons, entered the lobby with her children. The murmur among the guests was instantly audible. Some recognized her immediately, others wondered who this elegant and confident woman was. Marcus and Sophie walked proudly beside her, admiring their mother's quiet strength. She walked toward Blake with implacable calm. Her footsteps echoed lightly on the polished wooden floor, and every eye turned toward her. Silence began to fall in the room, a silence filled with curiosity and tension. Angela gently raised her hand to attract attention and said in a clear, confident voice, "Good evening, everyone. I'm Angela Robinson. And tonight, I'm the new owner of the Manhattan Grill." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Blake, frozen, paled slightly. His lips trembled, unable to utter a word. The customers exchanged incredulous glances. The woman he had humiliated over a year ago now stood before him, the undisputed master of his restaurant. Angela continued, her eyes shining with determination. "A few months ago, I was kicked out of this restaurant with my children, publicly humiliated. Tonight, I show you that dignity and perseverance always triumph. This place will no longer be just a luxury restaurant. It will be a symbol of respect, inclusion, and excellence." Blake, blushing with shame, stammered, "Angela. I didn't know." But Angela didn't give him a chance to apologize. Her goal wasn't to demean him further, but to show the world and her children that she had won back what was hers through courage and intelligence. The guests began to applaud. Some were moved by the scene, others impressed by the new owner's poise and confidence. Marcus and Sophie, their eyes shining, fully understood their mother's strength and the lesson this evening symbolized: no one should ever allow themselves to be crushed by injustice. Angela smiled inwardly. The comeback had taken place, and the real transformation of the Manhattan Grill was only just beginning. The silence that followed Angela Robinson's statement quickly turned to murmurs of amazement and admiration. Jonathan Blake, who until then had dominated the restaurant with his arrogance, felt the ground shift beneath his feet. The woman he had humiliated a few months earlier was now not only the mistress of the place, but also the one who set the tone. Angela walked slowly toward him, her gaze firm but calm. Her voice, clear and measured, echoed through the hall. "Jonathan, this place was built to welcome and inspire people, not to humiliate them. Tonight, I'm taking over to change that." Blake, red with anger and humiliation, tried to protest, but Angela continued without giving him time to regain control. "I am not here for revenge, but to establish respect and excellence. You had your chance to run this restaurant with arrogance and prejudice. From today on, the Manhattan Grill will belong to those who know how to lead with dignity and integrity." The staff, who had watched Angela from the start, sensed the shift in dynamics. Employees who had once blindly followed Blake understood that the new direction would be different. The customers, however, felt a new atmosphere, a breath of respect and inclusion that had never existed before within these walls. Blake tried again to speak, but his words stumped. The whispers and stares of the guests reminded him how blind and unfair he had been. Angela, on the other hand, showed neither anger nor vengeance. She embodied the quiet power of someone who had transformed pain into triumph. She gestured towards Marcus and Sophie, who stood proudly at her sides. "My children see what it means to rise again after humiliation. And I want everyone here to understand the same thing. Respect and perseverance are more powerful than arrogance and hatred." The change was palpable. The Manhattan Grill was no longer just a luxury restaurant, it was becoming a living symbol of justice and resilience. Customers and staff began to applaud, some with emotion, others with silent admiration. Blake, still stunned, finally realized that he had been overwhelmed not by strength, but by Angela Robinson's intelligence, patience, and courage. There was nothing more he could do to regain control. The confrontation had taken place, and Angela had won, not through revenge, but through self-control and dignity. In the weeks following the revelation, Angela Robinson set about transforming the Manhattan Grill into a place where respect, excellence, and inclusion were at the center of every decision. Every detail was rethought, from the decor to the customer service, staff selection, and food quality. Angela began by renewing the management team and staff. Those who had previously been disrespectful or arrogant were replaced with talented and committed employees, chosen for their competence but also for their positive attitude and respect for all customers. Training on inclusive service and diversity was implemented, reflecting Angela's philosophy: respect was the key to success. The menu was completely revised. Angela invited talented chefs from different cultures to create unique dishes, combining tradition and modernity. The Manhattan Grill became a place where creativity and culinary diversity were celebrated, while maintaining the elegance and refinement for which it had become renowned. Customers began to notice the change. Those who frequented the restaurant for its sheer prestige were surprised by the warmth and attention paid to each and every one. Former customers, once indifferent or arrogant, sensed the difference and began to understand that the restaurant was no longer just a place of luxury, but a place of value and respect. Angela spent a lot of time working with her children, Marcus and Sophie, who were actively involved in some symbolic decisions, such as welcoming clients and organizing special events. She wanted to show them that leadership wasn't measured solely by wealth or power, but by the ability to inspire, protect, and uplift those around you. Even Jonathan Blake, who remained involved as a limited consultant, had to accept the changes. He watched Angela lead calmly and effectively, finally understanding that true power came not from arrogance but from intelligence, patience, and integrity. The Manhattan Grill quickly became a symbol of the city, a restaurant where excellence coexisted with inclusion, where the elite didn't crush others but celebrated talent and respect. Angela Robinson hadn't just taken back what was hers, she had transformed a place of humiliation into an empire of dignity and success. That evening, as she watched her children interact with the customers and staff, Angela smiled inwardly. Every past humiliation, every tear shed, every contemptuous look, had been transformed into a silent but irresistible force. She had shown Marcus, Sophie, and everyone who had witnessed her journey that perseverance, dignity, and patience always triumph in the end. A few months after her takeover, the Manhattan Grill had changed its face, and its name was now associated not only with luxury and culinary excellence, but also with inclusion, respect, and resilience. Angela Robinson, standing behind the reception counter, looked around the room with satisfaction. Every customer, every employee, felt the new atmosphere she had created. Marcus and Sophie ran around the tables, helping the waiters and greeting the regulars with confidence. Angela looked at them with pride, knowing that this victory was not only hers, but her children's. She had shown them, by example, that even after the most cruel humiliations and injustices, it was possible to rise again and earn the respect one deserved. The local media, which had been following the transformation, came to cover another special evening hosted by Angela. The journalists spoke of the resilience, strategy, and intelligence she had demonstrated in transforming past humiliation into resounding triumph. The audience was fascinated by the story of this woman who had regained control of her life and destiny. Even Jonathan Blake, once arrogant and contemptuous, had to acknowledge Angela's superiority and talent. He watched, now silent and humble, as the restaurant flourished under a leadership based on integrity and respect. Angela smiled as she watched her children interact with customers and staff, proud of their mother and inspired by her example. She knew that the true legacy she was leaving Marcus and Sophie went far beyond wealth or professional success. It was a lesson in courage, patience, and dignity. On that memorable evening, as the light from the chandeliers shimmered on the smiling faces of the guests, Angela spoke a few words to the guests. This restaurant is more than just a place to eat. It's a symbol of what can be accomplished when you transform adversity into strength, pain into motivation, and humiliation into perseverance. I hope each of you leaves here understanding that dignity and respect are the foundations of true success. Applause filled the room. Angela knew that victory was not just personal, it was universal. She had proven that injustice could be overcome with intelligence and determination, and that every humiliation could become a step toward resounding triumph. As the evening drew to a close, Angela looked at Marcus and Sophie, holding hands, and whispered with a smile. Always remember, my children, nothing and no one can take away what you deserve when you believe in yourself and act with courage and dignity. And in that soft, warm light, the Manhattan Grill shone not only with its luxury, but with the incredible story of a woman who had transformed humiliation into a legacy, leaving a timeless life lesson for all who had witnessed her journey.